Ari, Ole Miss is headed to Athens, Georgia, following a narrow escape from Washington State. Meanwhile, Georgia, semi-narrow escape from Auburn. We will relitigate all the ref stuff later.
This isn't an 8-minute ref video?
No, we can do that later. I think the Auburn fans want the ref video. The Georgia fans just want to know, can we beat Ole Miss? And the answer is, I don't know.
Well, there are two ways of looking at it. One is it was a narrow escape on the road in a tough game. The other way of looking at it, and if you're a Georgia fan, I would suggest looking at it that way. They allowed like 20 total yards and a half of football on the road. So, that was a pretty good defensive performance. Now, I know a lot of it has to do with, maybe the psyche of the other team feeling depressed about something that happened that was out of their control. I don't know. I don't take that as what happened.
No, I think Georgia clamped down. Yeah.
And Auburn obviously was limited at times, in the past offensively, and Georgia made sure to exploit those weaknesses. So for me, as we navigate the SEC, I don't know if I would put any team in the SEC in the top 3 most likely to win the national title category right now. But when you look at the second tier of teams that still have plenty to prove and a lot in the tank, Georgia and Alabama are the two teams that kind of stand above everybody else in the conference as teams that, maybe could do it, along with A&M too.
Yeah, the thing about Ole Miss is they kind of went on this run where they crushed Tulane. They beat LSU, statistically dominated the game against LSU, even though the score was not that different. And you thought, okay, they found something in Trinidad Chambliss. They are maybe a better team than they were last year, even though they probably were more talented last year. But now we find out, okay, what does it mean when they aren't probably as talented as they were last year and they play a team that has that level of talent? This is obviously clearly the most talented team they'll have played all year. We were at Ole Miss, Georgia last year, where Ole Miss physically dominated that game up front. I don't know that Ole Miss on the line of scrimmage is going to be capable of dominating Georgia the way they did last year.
Yeah. I feel like Georgia, from a talent standpoint, is probably similar to what they were last year. And I think Ole Miss, from a talent standpoint, is a little bit worse than they were last year, but that doesn't mean they're not good enough to win.
Right.
I think that if you watch Georgia play, you have questions about whether or not they are capable of reaching that upper echelon gear where they can exist in a high-flying game against one of the best teams in the country, but you don't doubt that it's possible. So, here you've got 2 top 10 teams, one's undefeated, one isn't. This is a game that I think is important for a context standpoint for both of them. Like, who is legit? Who is real? And as we get into this, mid-October stretch, Andy, where the entire SEC feels like a hodgepodge of really good, these are the games that separate who's really, really good and who's elite. And I think you can't really, this is a big game. It's a big, big game for both of them.
Well, and the other thing is, this is the part where the grind gets to you. Like, Georgia's had more of a grind than Ole Miss at this point, because Georgia's had to play Alabama, Georgia's had to play Auburn, Georgia's had to play Tennessee already. Ole Miss has not hit that part of its schedule yet, and Ole Miss got an easier schedule draw than Georgia anyway in terms of the SEC schedule. They're coming off a Washington State game, though, where they did not look good. They really didn't wake up until the second half. They did take over and finally win the game, but it was way closer than it needed to be. And it's interesting because I came away from this wondering, does Lane Kiffin just not handle open dates well? Because they came off an open date and just laid an egg, which they fortunately won. Shout out to our guys Dan and Ty at the Solid Verbal. They won their clunker. But last year, Ole Miss crushes Georgia, has an open date, and then goes to Gainesville and loses and gets knocked out of the playoff. So maybe Lane Kiffin does not need the extra time. Maybe Lane Kiffin needs a week-to-week grind more than other coaches do. So the fact that they got this clunker out of the way, I think that gives me a little more confidence in Ole Miss that they will be up, they will be ready when they get to Georgia. I don't worry about Ole Miss just being physically outclassed in this game, because I think we've seen them against LSU, which is a obviously very athletic team, and they played fine. They were fine up front. I'm not worried about that. I guess I'm just worried about, are they going to look offensively like they did against Washington State, where they were sloppy? Chambliss had maybe his worst game as a starter so far. Because if you do that against Georgia, they're going to make you pay for those mistakes.
Yeah, and we're going to play the game of guess the line to try to help us visualize this a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at the BetMGM line for next weekend, and right now it shows Georgia minus. We're playing guess the line. I was going to.
I'm glad you didn't say. So I'm going to guess Georgia minus 3.5.
So this is kind of bizarre because BetMGM has Georgia minus 10.5. I'm seeing 9.5 and even 6.5 and 5.5 in some other places. I'm excited to see where the line settles, but Georgia is more than a field goal consensus across the board. BetMGM
there's nothing I've seen that makes me feel comfortable with that. Like I would feel comfortable with somewhere between a field goal and a touchdown, I guess. I would not feel comfortable with more than a touchdown in this game.
Yeah. The game is going to be won, I think, defensively on both sides of the ball because, you look at what both teams have done. It just seems to me like Georgia is going to be limited offensively to what they're going to do. They need to corral Ole Miss's defense or Ole Miss's offense. And of course, Ole Miss has to, make sure that Georgia doesn't find anything offensively. I think this is going to be a lower scoring game. And I think it's going to kind of mirror probably what we saw in the Auburn game. I don't know if you
Georgia's got to be able to run the ball better than it did against Auburn. That really is what happened. It was all on Gunnar Stockton to make that stuff happen at the end of that game, in the pass game. And they did. I mean, Zachariah Branch, leading receiver for Georgia, 9 catches for 57 yards, by the way.
Yeah.
Not exactly how you drew it up, but you'll take it. You'll take it, and that's what they needed.
Does Georgia have a dynamic offense though? Like, just
not really, no.
Right?
Like Chauncey Bowen's the guy who had, I think he averaged like 9 yards a carry against Alabama. He had 4 carries for 5 yards against Auburn. Like, it was tough sledding for Georgia's running game. I don't know that Georgia is going to be able to just run all over Ole Miss. Like, Auburn has a really good defense. I don't think Ole Miss is that giant of a drop off though.
No. I think that you're probably talking about two teams that are athletically similar, so you're not going to be able to get bully ball stuff. This is schematics. This is, making sure that you put your players in the right position and calling good plays. Like, I know that sounds like 5th grade analysis, but like it's true. Like,
and like Josh McCray had some good runs there in that basically game sealing drive that Georgia had.
Yeah.
But they just weren't consistent moving the ball at all. And I think against Ole Miss, they're going to score on you. You're like, Ole Miss is going to put up some points. You're going to have to be more consistent. So I think we may see a game a little more similar to Georgia-Tennessee than Georgia-Auburn.
Yeah, I just question whether Georgia can do offensively to
Ole Miss what it did to Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, because they scored a lot in that
game.
Did. I mean, like they did. We've seen it in the tank. Like, I'm not trying to say that Georgia can't score. But most of my exposure to watching Georgia this year has been a semi-limited offensive attack. It seems
they don't scare you to death. There's nobody who really scares you. There's no downfield threat that scares you. Gunnar Stockton has been able to make some big throws when he's had to. I think of the London Humphreys throw against Tennessee. He made a couple of those against Auburn last night. But I've not seen anything that really terrifies me in terms of this player is someone you have to stop or you're dead.
Yeah, and the one thing I do want to say, though, because I've been kind of down on Georgia offensively, I think that Gunnar Stockton has done a pretty tremendous job this year of making big-time throws in moments where they need him.
He has.
And that's an important aspect.
Like Ty Simpson light, basically.
Yeah. And that's a trait that comes through in games like this. It might be a tie game in the 4th quarter, and it might be 3rd and 6, and Gunnar Stockton might be able to put the ball on the back shoulder of somebody to move the chains.
We did see Trinidad Chambliss do that against Arkansas, where that they were in a tight game and that was going back and forth. It was kind of last team with the ball wins, and so he's done that too. So I think this could be a fun game, like for the unaffiliated, for the fans who aren't rooting for either team and aren't having a heart attack with every sudden shift. You're going to have fun. For Georgia and Ole Miss fans, I imagine this one's going to be sheer misery
Yeah,
for
it
a
might
while.
feel like oral surgery.
Yeah.
But if you win, then the oral surgery was success, and if you lost, then you're going to have you're going to need some pain pills.
It's going to be tough. But Georgia needs it probably more than Ole Miss needs it. They both need it, though. You look at the rest of the schedule, you got to win this one because there's a lot coming up, and you don't have as big a margin for error as you think, even though Ole Miss comes into this undefeated. So very excited. Ole Miss headed to Athens for a big game in the SEC.